Hi, I'm Admiral Charlie Ray, Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard, and you're watching LGC TV.
Welcome to today's training video. I'd like to start off, of course, by giving a colossal thank you to our Vice Commandant, Admiral Charles Ray, for taking the time to introduce today's video. I'm Lieutenant Ethan Llewellyn with the LGC NCOE, and today we're going to talk about electrical equipment installed in hazardous locations on a liquefied gas carrier and some common shortfalls we have been noticing during some COC examinations. Now, for a full list of current Coast Guard training videos, please visit our website. Additional information about electrical installations can be found in Chapter 11 of the Coast Guard's Foreign Gas Carrier Examiner Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures, or TTP, the International Electrotechnical Commission, or IEC standard, and the IGC code. If you don't have a copy of our TTP, you can download or print a copy for free from our website. Now, before we get any further into this training, let me start by imploring those listening that if you haven't received formal electrical training for hazardous areas on board vessels, we at the NCOE strongly recommend that you seek out training. Our crew here at the NCOE have recently attended multiple formal IEC and hazardous area trainings here in the Houston area, and it has helped us identify many vessels operating with unapproved or improperly maintained electrical equipment within their identified hazardous areas. If you'd like to learn more about where we received our electrical training or would like help finding appropriate training closer to your home unit or place of work, please reach out to us. So let's get started. Now, the IGC code defines a gas danger space or zone in the definition section of Chapter 1.3.17 of IGC code. This definition identifies areas of a vessel that a gas-safe atmosphere can't be guaranteed at all times during normal or abnormal conditions. Keep in mind, there are three elements needed to create an explosion. You need oxygen, fuel, and an ignition source. Well, we can't eliminate oxygen since many of these spaces and areas are not inerted, and we can't always eliminate the fuel source, and some of these ships can carry up to 266,000 cubic meters of LNG. So the only way to reduce the risk of an explosion is by controlling the potential ignition source within these hazardous areas. This is achieved by using certified safe electrical equipment. Now, electrical installation requirements come from Chapter 10 of the IGC code, and it states electrical installations should be such as to minimize the risk of fire and explosions from flammable products. Now, the asterisk seen there in the IGC code further sends you to the International Electrotechnical Commission Standard 60092-502 to ensure proper electrical installations in hazardous zones. Now, keep in mind, the IEC standard applicability does not end with Part 502. What many people do not realize is there are more than 20 different IEC standards that are applicable and must be followed by gas carriers to include crew training of proper IEC installations, inspection criteria and intervals, and how to repair and maintain IEC equipment. With that said, again, we here at the NCOE highly recommend anyone who is responsible for the inspection, installation, or maintenance of electrical equipment on liquefied gas carriers to seek out formal electrical training. Now, a common misconception by people is that hazardous electrical equipment in a hazardous zone are gas tight, and this is not true. EX enclosures actually allow gas to travel within its enclosure. However, it is designed and tested that if gas enters the equipment and ignites, the explosion created will be contained within the device, and the gases created from the explosion will be cooled and released through the flame path to prevent the flame or explosion from communicating to the flammable atmosphere surrounding the electrical equipment. Now, this equipment has been designed and tested in accordance with the IEC standards with specific internal volume calculated. That is why modifications to equipment and their enclosures could prevent this equipment from working properly if in a flammable atmosphere. If components had been removed, it would increase the volume within and allow more gas to be present than intended. And if components are added and the internal volume is decreased, then it would allow pressure piling to occur. Now, because of this design, proper installation and maintenance is critical for it to operate properly. Now, during a Coast Guard COC examination, one of the items examined on electrical equipment is the data plate to ensure the equipment is installed in a suitable location. The first part of the placarding we look at is the EX, which means that the equipment follows the IEC standard for explosion protection. The type of protection used in this example is identified with a lowercase d, which means the device is flameproof. Now, there are different types of protections appropriate for hazardous zones, and it is up to the hazardous area zone and type of equipment used to determine which is appropriate. This is the gas group that the equipment is able to operate in. The Roman numeral and letter 2C we can look at this chart and see that the equipment is rated for use around gases categorized with hydrogen and acetylene. Now 2C is the most flammable gas group, so it is able to use for 2A and 2B. Since LNG and some LPG carriers would only require 2A equipment, a 2C gas group piece of equipment would be appropriate. Next on the data plate is a T rating, which stands for temperature rating. You can see in the right column that the IEC standard has 6 different ratings, T6 being the most stringent. Now this rating has to do with the allowable surface temperature the equipment can get in space without potentially igniting vapors from the surface temperature of the equipment. The next symbol you will find is the equipment protection level. Now this indicates what zones it is intended for safe use. The first letter will either be a G or a D, which means the equipment is suitable for gas or dust atmospheres. Second letter will either be an A, B, or C and indicates the zones the equipment can be used in. The zones are synonymous with the ATEX zones 0, 1, and 2. And the final symbol we look at is IP or ingress protection rating, and it's the ability for equipment to prevent solids and liquids from entering the equipment. The first number indicates the protection level against solids, and the second number indicates the liquid protection level. So for example, the minimum IP rating on all gas carriers is IP54. This means that the equipment is dust protection and protected against water splashing. So during your examination, if you found evidence of dust within the equipment or excessive accumulation of water, it could indicate that the equipment protection rating has failed and needs to be repaired or replaced. Now the other part of the electrical equipment that is inspected is the cable glands. Now, this piece of equipment provides a proper path for electrical supply to feed into the equipment being powered. A cable glands must appear to be in good condition and must have markings indicating that it has the same EX protection and IP rating as the equipment it is attached to. Here is an example of an EX marking on a cable gland that would be compared to the data plate on the electrical equipment. It is important to remember that the cable glands are not the only things that have to have the same protection rating as the equipment it's attached to. If a piece of equipment does not need all of its ports, the unused port must be secured with an approved plug of the same protection rating as seen in this picture. Now let's look at some pictures we have taken on ships previously with failed or improperly installed electrical equipment. Now from the front, everything looks normal on this EX box. But looking from the side, you can see that the bolts on the cover were not tightened properly and has now distorted the flame path of the EX equipment. That increases the chance of this equipment not containing an explosion within itself as designed. This is a great example of light with an indicator that the IP rating has failed. The light and cable glands both have an IP rating of 6.7, which meant that the light could withstand temporary immersion in water. Keeping this in mind that there could always be small amounts of condensation collected within the lens of a deck lights, a large amount of water like in this picture indicates that the IP rating has failed and requires attention. Now this airlock alarm was found to have silicone being used for the electrical cable feed through. The crew replaced the silicone with what they thought was a proper cable gland, but as you can see from these pictures, it was an unmarked and unapproved cable gland for the EX equipment that it was being used on. And this final picture is a reminder of the importance of using approved blanks and plugs on ports not being used. Remember, without approved blanks, an explosion within this equipment could easily travel to areas outside of the equipment. Now, I hope you got a lot out of today's training video, and a special thanks again for having Admiral Ray join us today. We'll see you soon.